Good morning. This is Dean Heskin, President and CEO of Swiss America. Thank you for tuning in to our podcast, The Secret War on Cash. And I know that sounds like a very ominous title, but it kind of is an ominous situation. We are discussing some of the things that have been happening in our financial markets with our economy, our currency, our country. And there is no shortage of a war going on, rest assured. A war that can be winnable by us, meaning there are ways that we can protect ourselves against what's been happening in our markets and our economy, but it's going to take some work. It's going to take some understanding. So I have with me my co-host, Chris Agelastos. Chris, how are you this morning?
I'm doing very, very well.
There we go. Very, very well. Perfect.
Want to change it up.
I appreciate that. And I knew you had it in you. We talked about that last podcast, and I knew that would be coming. Well, as we talk about things in the markets and the economy, there's been, certainly a lot of information, a lot of fuel, if you will, on the topic of some of the things that have been happening in the financial sector as it relates to fraud, fines, settlements. And the most recent one here, or one of the more recent, let's say, JP Morgan, Chase, Bank of America, 6 financial giants pay $70 million in a settlement over allegations of widespread fraud and collusion. Now, this is $70 million when you start talking about, the type of players that we're talking about here. That is a drop in the bucket. I think you would agree with that, Chris.
Yeah.
And, as I read this article or this headline, I can't help but to think it's like anything in life, having children or even when I was younger, having friends who had children before I had children. I'll never forget one instance where I had 2 sisters. They had been fighting and this, that, whatever else. And one of them got punished. And she was so upset because she in this particular case was being punished for something she didn't do. It was the other one who did it. And what I told him, I said, listen, I understand that. And let me tell you something. That's going to happen in the course of your life. You're going to not do something, get punished. But when that happens, if you're looking for fairness, here's what you have to remind yourself of. How many times were there that you did things that you should have been punished for, but you weren't? So do you really want fairness, or do you really just not want to be punished for this thing? And I know that seems like a crazy example, but here's why I'm bringing that up. When I read it in a headline like this, and these big players, and this goes back to 2014, a $70 million settlement, I can't help but to think, okay, they got in trouble. They got caught. Yeah. That's fantastic. But this is what they got caught for. Are there other things like this out there? And so I'll ask you, Chris, do you think this is just a one and done, or is this just kind of the tip of the iceberg type deal?
I've become quite a cynic when it comes to a lot of the banks, the big banks in our financial system. And I think this is just a drop in the bucket. I almost wonder if they just have to get in trouble for something every once in a while. I wonder if they even get to pick which things they get in trouble for, just so that they can have a headline that, we're sorry and don't worry, we're cleaning things up. But, when I read this went back to 2014, 10 years ago now is when this happened. They're now being, punished with this. It's not even a slap on the wrist. The 70 million to them is it's probably not even the equivalent of me having to fill up my gas tank. So it's nothing. And think about the money they made. This 70 million is probably just a drop in the bucket compared to the interest they made on all the fraud that they committed over the last 10 years. So it legitimately is well, it's a lot of money to me if I had to pay a fine like that. It's absolutely nothing to them. And it's just another reason why I think so many of the people we talk to have no trust, no trust for the banking system or the banks. We're all playing in this system and trying to get ahead. It's hard to save, put a few bucks away. You hope that money can grow and it'll be there for you down the road. But then you see all these examples of just the insiders are the ones that are constantly winning and getting away with these types of things. And it's frustrating, for the rest of us.
Yeah, and we've seen and covered in some of our earlier podcasts, Chase and B of A and some of the others out there that, they have their banking functions, they have their brokerage functions. And there's been, in addition to this, several other things and fines and penalties and settlements that have been implemented against them or, that they've had to make good on.
Yeah.
But what I look at with this is really the fine is okay. Fine, $70 million. That's, again, it is a drop in the bucket. Widespread fraud and collusion. And
yeah.
That's really the real problem, because you hear a word like that, or a phrase like that, you have our market is overvalued as it is today. And this is, look, I don't want to be cynical here, but I don't believe that this, going back to 2014, that all the widespread fraud and collusion just disappeared. I think it still exists out there.
Right.
And that kind of leads into the next article we have here, where it's titled "Warren Buffett's Favorite Market Gauge Hit a 2-Year High, Signaling Stocks Are Heavily Overvalued and Could Crash." And so, it begs the question with the fraud and collusion, and in particular, the first article that we were just talking about, it gets into what they were doing with bonds. If I remember correctly, how there was overstatement and what have you, which is certainly something that is not hard to believe could be happening into our market today, meaning that there are a lot of overvalued equities out there. The marketplace is basically showing us more than what really exists. But you've got somebody like an investment legend who may go down as like the biggest legend of all time, Warren Buffett, talking about how it could crash, and his gauges that he uses that signal the market could crash are telling us that that's exactly what's going to happen. And so I guess at the end of the day, you've got these problems that we see with the settlement, with the fraud and collusion, and then just in general, you have the market guru saying that it could crash. I mean, is there any reason that we should be taking everything we have out of the stock market right now? I mean, it seems like, what other sign do we need?
Yeah, I mean, it's got me concerned, because you have you have a system that's sort of built against you, right? It's kind of built for the insiders. So, I'm an outsider trying to maybe make a few bucks if I can. And then on top of that, the market is so overvalued that Buffett himself says, you're playing with fire, being in this market right now. And
that's powerful.
Right. Yeah. I mean, people tend to listen when Buffett talks, right? He knows a thing or two, and he shows some examples. One of the things that we were just talking about in a recent podcast was the .com bubble. Well, he said this red flag, this gauge that he uses, was going off during the .com bubble. And then again, just this, a year and a half ago or so in 2022, when the S&P and the NASDAQ, had quickly, moved up quite a bit, hit red on his gauge. And, soon thereafter, they dropped 20 to 33%, which is kind of minor these days, because we're used to even seeing bigger drops. But if the average, person getting close to retirement saw a drop of 20 to 30%, let alone 50% or above, that could really affect them. So, and just to give a little bit more context on this, in this gauge, essentially he takes the U.S. market cap and divides it by GDP. And if you get a number of 100, that means the market is fairly priced. Okay, so things aren't a great value, but they're not a bad deal. They're fair. If it's 70 to 80, that's a really good deal. It's a buying opportunity. That means you want to get in. Well, the numbers right now are 184, so nearly double 100. And that's really what has, people talking right now. And we're hearing it from others too. We've been talking about it recently on the podcast. Everybody is saying that these numbers are not sustainable. There's going to be trouble. And we don't know if it's going to be, tomorrow or next month, or maybe they can kick the can down the road a year. But do you really want to be riding on that train when you know at some point you're going to hit a brick wall?
Sure. Well, and look, at the end of the day, diversification is always the best position to be in when it comes to the markets, because no one knows for sure what's going to happen or when it's going to happen. So it's not as though I'm saying, head for the hills, cash in all your stocks or what have you. But by the same token, if you've been riding this wave of,
exuberance
and what the market's been doing, et cetera. Yes, it may be time to take a hard look at what you're doing and maybe get a little more of a conservative player position, et cetera. So definitely something of interest. I know a lot of people have been calling us, asking questions about these articles, these comments, these statements that are being made out there. And that's why the encouragement is, again, you can't stress it enough, diversified. Have some metals, have some equities, have some bonds, have some real estate, have some cash. Keep yourself in as balanced a position as you can. Well, thank you for all that, Chris. And thank you for those of you who are tuning in. If you have not subscribed, please do so. If you'd like more information on this and other topics, please contact our office. It's toll free at 1-800-289-2646. You'll see the phone number there in the podcast description, or you can visit us online at www.swissamerica.com. Until we see you again, have a great rest of your day, and we look forward to the next podcast where we get into other issues or topics similar to this.